Cindy Toll.
Here.
Vicki Yates.
Here.
Derek Metzen.
Here.
Bob Stewart.
Here.
Chair McLaughlin.
Here.
Christina Robertson, staff.
Tony Conkle, Community Development Director.
All right.
Okay.
Hello.
Let's see. Public comments. Okay, discussion items.
All right.
This is because this is a work session. We're going to talk about prior file that came before us back, I think, in February. PC 12-031, the debrief of HR 11-1, 804 4th Avenue.
Okay.
So we'll turn over to staff.
All right. Thank you, Chair McLaughlin. This is a interesting situation that happened, and I want to talk a little bit about it, but really the goal of tonight is to get feedback from you as a Historic Review Board about the next time this comes up and how you best want to give direction to staff and how you want staff to incorporate findings in regards to alternative materials and alternative designs in future staff reports. So just real briefly, I want to just revisit what HR 1101 was. This was in your commission report, but if you remember last February, a year ago February, a split entry home was proposed to have modern alterations of a modern addition and a modern one-car garage placed on it. That was reviewed and approved by the Historic Review Board, but there was an issue with how the material was uploaded in the agenda and how it was presented in the staff report. The applicant had a spec sheet in the narrative of the submittal that described that the roof was standing seam metal, but it was not put on the elevations, but it was in the narrative. That narrative, along with the plans, were noticed out, and they were unfortunately not attached to your agenda. What was attached to your agenda was just the plans. For some reason, the narrative and the plans were two separate documents, and they should have been uploaded to two separate documents on the agenda, and it wasn't left out. On a staff level, when I wrote my findings for the addition, I wrote findings for kind of the alternative design, but as in general, but did not spell out the metal roof specifically because it was included in the application as a spec, but unfortunately was not uploaded in the agenda. So there is a question of A, did the Historic Review Board understand specifically that they were approving a metal roof? And B, what could staff do in the future to more clearly identify when alternative materials were being proposed and approved by the Historic Review Board? Talking to our land use attorney, this is an approved land use action. There is the 10-day appeal period is passed. Regardless of if the material was uploaded or not to the Historic Review Board, this application is final. So this really what we're talking about tonight is, in the future, how best do you want to address alternative materials and alternative designs in staff reports and in presentations. So just really briefly to remind you, this was the split entry home in Kenema. This was what the applicant proposed and the board approved. But what we're really here tonight is HRB direction on needed for future applications that utilize alternative designs and materials. So alternative materials, the design guides for new construction do allow an option for alternative materials, and we have said that they can be approved. And when the staff report was written, we looked on balance, scale, and massing, and because this house was a 1978 split entry home, this modern architecture was an appropriate design attempt or design option by the applicant. However, in the future, should alternative materials clearly be spelled out in the basic facts, like the applicant is proposing, vinyl windows, or the applicant is proposing a standing seam metal roof, the applicant is proposing metal garage doors, and kind of list the alternative materials, kind of in the basic facts, just to reiterate what would be maybe in the applicant's submittal. Should the board also then, in the conditions of approval, which sometimes we do, is spell out that the applicant shall use the following materials. The board could say, the Historic Review Board is approving the use of XYZ materials for this application based on this proposal. So it's just black and white explicit. So that gives the Historic Review Board and the neighbors kind of an understanding of what was approved.
Just for my edification, what's the process that we have been using as compared to what we're proposing?
Yeah, we've probably done a combination of them, and in a 2020 hindsight, I should have written a sentence or two about the alternative materials, but I mushed it all in with the larger design because the whole design was not meeting an historic design standard because this was not a historic building. So it was kind of a larger picture finding for this specific situation compared to what we've been used to. Was a little bit of an odd duck for the historic district.
When the process starts, they interview with you first. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I would think that the simplest way would be for you to get from them a sense of what kind of materials they plan.
Right, and I knew it was a metal roof. So
Right.
when I wrote the staff report, I knew it was a metal roof, and I recommended approval, and I still do. I think for their architecture it was fine.
Right, but maybe you could stress to them that they need to, put that down in their.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So this third bullet on here is, should the use of alternative materials be part of the notice to the neighbors? And if you see my parentheses, I don't really recommend it this time because we would need to revise the code. And the question is, if something was missed or it wasn't noticed correctly, that could have implications on the approval timeline and process. So if we want to go down this third bullet, the future work sessions will be needed how best to address that in the notice. But in regards to the first two, I think that can be more explicit if that's something the board wants to do.
So what I just understood you to say that bullet number 1 is in fact what your intention would be anyway.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And number 2, how does that differ?
I think it's one of those where the board clearly, almost in an affirmative, because it's a condition of approval, almost like a double affirmative, explicitly approves it. It doesn't make it any more legally binding. It just absolutely 100% makes the board, the applicant, and the neighbors kind of explicit. Now, the problem, it goes a little bit down to the third option, is if you don't explicitly approve it, it doesn't mean you disapproved. I mean, if an applicant has something in their submittal and we don't condition it to be different, they can build it. So there's a little problem with the more explicit you get, you don't want to give an expectation that if it wasn't explicitly on there and something was missed, or it doesn't make it any more legally obligating just because it's in the condition of approval. But it does make it clearer.
I just think that we end up talking about material usage anyway, no matter what kind of a structure we're talking about. We always end up talking about that. And then we always offer alternatives if they're kind of offering something that isn't appropriate, and if we get this step out of the way in the beginning, it should streamline things.
Right, this is more of when you are approving an alternative. We have looked at this as a board, and we are approving this alternative for X, Y, Z reasons.
Right, but if we get that process out of the way first, to know that these are the materials that are acceptable, and that they pick one and do their narrative, then we know right off the bat that we're not going to have to.
Right, no, but this is if the applicant knowingly proposes an alternative and we knowingly accept it based on, this modern design as a situation. Or I can see another, maybe something like Olson's Drug. There's something that's on 7th Street that is an alternative design, a material that may not be explicitly mentioned in the code, in the design guidelines for new construction, but we find that this new material makes sense, and it's silent in the design standards, but we make a finding. There's always going to be something or materials that we can't foresee that we may need to make comment on.
So The discrepancy that we're discussing is that you presented the information to us in your report and verbally, I assume, at the
Right,
meeting.
right.
But we didn't get the document that the proposer.
You didn't get the narrative that had the spec sheet that indicated the materials. And in my staff report, I didn't clearly identify, I cleared this was modern architecture, but I did not clearly identify
The metal.
the metal, even though I knew it was metal and I supported it then and I would still support it as the use.
Can we have an opportunity to comment in the middle of this? Because there's some stuff that's being said that we perceive as erroneous and needs to be corrected. And I know Christina is honestly trying to do her best up here, but we believe that there was an egregious overstepping of this metal roof that is in violation of 1740. And
hold on,
we'd
just-
like to make that point.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you a second. I just want to let Christina finish.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then we can talk about it.
I have more to the PowerPoint.
Question. It sounds to me, based on these 3 points, that addressing it in the staff report would be sufficient unless there's a good reason to put it in the conditions of approval. For instance, would it help you, if this came up again, to do a search to identify what other properties we had used those special alternative
Yeah.
materials?
I guess I'm kind of more getting, I'd like to get your concerns. I mean, maybe you're not concerned about this issue, and you're fine with it. Or there may be a particular issue you want to make sure in the future that we address better. And this is really looking at how do we make sure that all parties clearly understand what has been approved. And I think that's where some of this confusion has been. And it's really how do you write a better staff report, and how do you better convey the findings of the Historic Review Board to other parties.
I agree with, we just wanted to put some other options out there to make sure that we are getting the information out there in a way that everyone can understand it. And I agree, the best place to do that would almost to have alternatives in the staff report.
Exactly. That's
Because you really don't want to condition something
Right.
that
Right.
you're agreeing to. You're
Right.
more conditioning something where you want an alternative, or
Right.
you're not agreeing with it, so you want a different material. And so that it's almost like focusing it back in the staff report with more thorough findings that really spell out what's unique or what's different and why it's acceptable.
So that's good. The first bullet is what we do now, and I guess we can be just more explicit. The second bullet, we can definitely do it, but I worry a little bit about setting a precedent that doesn't make something more legal. If it wasn't mentioned, doesn't mean that it's any more legal. So but I see maybe there is a situation where just the board wants to be explicit about it. That's fine, but we have to be a little wary in how we do the second one. And the third one, I really don't recommend unless we fully do more research on our code.
Well, I was going to say just what Tony said. I think it would be best if we just had an extra section in the staff report that said alternative materials, and you could say, yes, here they are, and list them, or else just say not applicable.
Another alternative would be to, in terms of the submittal requirement, would be to put the onus back on the applicant as part of the narrative. You could almost create another section in the code that says, alternative materials.
Well-
List.
Alternative to what?
I don't think that we need to indicate specifically alternative materials, because we already asked them to provide what materials they're using.
Yeah.
And so if we deem them to be inappropriate or alternative, we would suggest that. And
I think you're adding another layer over a layer.
Yeah.
And I guess here's what I'm coming at. We approve this. I can read drawings. Maybe the regular person can't. I looked at this. It doesn't spell out standing metal seam. The narrative says it. The drawing shows it. These are public records. I think because you're about a week and a half away from perfection, you do a fantastic job. I think this was one place where it showed it on the drawing. It didn't spell it, and it was in the narrative. We didn't get it all.
Right.
But just because that one instance doesn't mean we've got to throw on some more government and more layer. So, and I don't want to do that. And because that's what government is. Let's throw another layer on to protect ourselves. And I just think that we do such a great job with what we have,
Right.
and that it's our job to make sure we're digging into materials. And if we miss something, that's one thing. This is a modern house. It's become modern, contemporary.
So are you saying you don't want to have a section that says alternative materials? Let me tell you why.
can.
Let me tell you why I want to. I can't read drawings like you do. Sometimes you may
That's what I
not
was
be at a
saying.
meeting, you
Yeah.
know, and it'll just go over my head. So I'd like to know and have it pointed out to me
Right.
when there's something like that being used, so I can.
But on that part, that's where you're right. I can read this and I can see it. Derek can see it. But to the regular homeowner or somebody who's getting a public notice, they may not see it. What is that roof? Maybe those are the string. So I get that. But I also don't want to do this, and then it gets confused. But if there is a section that's like okay, here we go. Here's another thing that we can use. Maybe this is architectural comp. Maybe it's 3-tab. Maybe it's standing metal seam. Here's other options, and then we talk about it. That's what you're looking for.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I was actually really impressed with the quality and completeness of these drawings. I was not a part of the board when this went through, but I found it to be very detailed and gave a lot of information. There were a lot of notations, and the materials weren't specifically indicated. It was pretty clearly identified in the graphics of the drawings and what the design intent was. And again, I go back to the narrative generally speaks to what the materials are that are incorporated. Like last month, or I guess the month before, we asked gentlemen to go away, provide more information, and because it wasn't clearly identified.
Right.
But in this case, I see that it was.
So what I'm hearing from
There-
you, okay.
I'm sorry. There was a miss that not all the information was provided to the board. But that being said, I think it was not a grievous error by any means, and it was still.
No, that's what I want to get at.
Yeah, my question
Right.
is, you're about 4 days away from perfection, and the time I've been here. So my question is, how would you propose that we solve the issue? Resolve it?
Well, I think I should have done a better, more in-depth discussion of maybe spelled out the material. The materials a little more, because that was two things. And the next slide talks a little bit about alternative designs. This is a unique situation because we have a non-historic house in an historic district. So that has an addition to it. In McLaughlin, we wouldn't really be reviewing this that much, or if we did. So, and then we don't have that many times where where the architecture is not historic, and that was the whole discussion in February. Was we didn't want to approach these additions with an eye to a bungalow architecture because that would have just been not honoring what this is, and so the fact that it was modern and it was well designed made sense, and this was a kind of a unique situation, and the conditions based from massing and landscaping made sense. So it was a one-off one, and so maybe that is why it didn't follow their normal kind of processes that we do.
And I appreciate not wanting to add more layers of bureaucracy. It's just that we want to make sure that we're explaining what happened and what you're comfortable with to make sure that you understand, the public understands, what we can do better here. Because we have identified where we erred in not providing you all the information in the narrative, not spelling it out exactly so you can understand why there is
I'm just a simpleton.
Yeah, because I think if I was a neighbor and I went, wait, I don't understand. This is an historic district. Why are you allowing a metal roof? This is all modern. What's going on? I don't get any of this. There was definitely findings for it, but maybe more explicit. I don't know.
I, too, cannot fault you at all for this. You do a fantastic job. I don't think that adding a little section that says alternative materials adds a layer of bureaucracy at all. I think it helps the public and the neighbors. It helps me, helps us, and it's something we have to focus in on, so why not just do it?
Right.
I think if we're going to add anything in, it would be in the notice to the neighbors that the addition is non-historic and the addition is
Yeah, it should be.
not.
Oh, right, so
intended to be
it's just
historic.
more than that. And
So that
and
if-
this may
if
never
that-
happen again, but it's,
Exactly.
this is
I definitely see
a-
that it could happen again. And so
That's
if,
true.
if someone did not want to see that or had very strong feelings just specifically against a modern building going into a historic neighborhood, then they would have clear notice. And I
right,
think
and that's
the best way.
more of just the base, it's not noticing, I don't want to get in position to notice material except, because if you miss something, it's just, that's not
But
a
it could-
good path to go down.
It could be as generic as historic addition to historic home or a non.
Materials.
I wouldn't even go into materials, just non-historic addition to historic home. Kind of just that generic. So if someone wants to look closer, that they could.
Okay, well, as a segue, I have another one.
Yeah.
This, and maybe you have the exact same answer, and I put these in two separate slides only because you may not. And that's, when we talk about these alternative designs, the design guidelines were meant to be a safe harbor and said if you want to build a new construction in a district or kind of a slam dunk addition to a historic building. Actually, no, additions, you have Secretary of Standards. So this is really new construction, a new garage. Or, you have, we have these design standards that doesn't necessarily exclude modern architecture from a district if it can meet compatibility standards of massing and design and all these other things you can look at. So, and I think that's where we were in regards to this application. And that was a little bit, the Atkinson Memorial Church edition, and maybe a little bit with Olson's, but I think we tried to clearly differentiate the ground floor and the upper floors. But, it had a little bit of that in there. So do you feel that we do a good enough job explaining kind of that alternative design in historic districts, or do you feel that we might want to do a future work session, or how should I best approach staff reports that look at that issue? Because I think, there is definitely a portion of the public that may have a legitimately different opinion about non-historic architecture in historic districts, or just maybe have never been introduced to that concept before.
I think it's clearly outlined in the requirements, but noticing neighbors, I think, is a good idea about alternative, if it is a design alternative. I think that should go in the notice. I'd welcome your guys' thoughts on that.
I also think that they should be able to view the drawings at some point. Probably not. I don't know if you can put it up.
We now upload them all online
Right.
if you go to the noticing.
So if they have the wherewithal to do that, that's great. But I think it's a chance for us to, as a learning tool, to teach about historic districts and what's going on in our historic district. And I think it's just a good way to let everybody know, because sometimes the neighborhood associations don't do it. I mean, and a lot of people don't come to the neighborhood meetings, and then all of a sudden there's this new construction going on, and they don't know why, and so I think it's every chance we have to educate, we should do that.
Okay.
Why don't you just, go through it?
What?
You want to just...
Yeah. Yeah, so the policy for the historic review, and this is just, I'm getting your direction, but I'll just finish these two slides to finish out, and I'll let Mr. Egger and Mr. Post make their comment. But the way our policies were written a while back, it allows alterations to be approved on a staff level to historic buildings and non-historic buildings in Kenema, and then also for and then additions and new construction by the Historic Review Board, and that was a decision to be made. Is that something that you still feel comfortable with? Is that something you'd want to have a future work session with?
I think it works.
Okay, and then
On my end.
I do as well.
okay, and then roofs talks about how metal needs to be approved by the Historic Review Board, and it was at this process. And once again, this policy is a bit interesting in regards to there are only a few structures in Kenema that are non-historic National Register, because if you're in the McLaughlin Conservation District, if you're non-historic, you're not being regulated. So it's a weird little group right here. So the board did approve the metal, but the question is it? I just don't know how much this will come up again. But
Well, the thing is, it says it's not permitted without board approval. That kind of is a blanket.
yeah,
We look at it, look at the situation. This house, when I look at it, it looks like it became more of a modern style, even you could say from the 50s. And it could have potentially used it. It's a historic material. It's a recyclable material. But they've made the house more of what I consider a much more contemporary house than the split level that it was. And then the other issue is you can look at, does it detract or enhance from the neighborhood or from the house itself? And anything's better than what was there. But that's my opinion. So, but I think on the staff level, I think the way you have it, the way it's written is fine. And I think if the board approves something, and that's the issue. The other issue is if the public doesn't want to get involved, there's no coming after the fact and complaining and whining. That's the hard part I have, is suddenly something goes up and someone complains what's going on. Well, they weren't involved in the process, so you can't slam the board for that. It's on public record. It's on the website. People can see it. So anyway, that's where I look at the lack of involvement isn't preclude some sort of a witch hunt to the HRB after the fact.
Yeah. And to that, I understand that not everyone looks at the website every week and knows exactly what's going
Right.
on. I
No.
don't expect them to. But it is what it is, and I think it's an appropriate process, because also we can't have things going through and then coming back later on for any reason. I mean, even, yeah. Go ahead.
And there are active people both in Kenema and in the McLaughlin District who are land use chairs who review this stuff all the time. So I think the neighborhoods are going to know about it.
Yeah. Okay, I appreciate that.
So, I mean, I think I'm getting. There's really no decision
Nothing
to be
decided.
made. It's just more of.
Discussion.
It's unfortunate that the two things happened, that the narrative wasn't uploaded and
Yeah.
the material wasn't explicitly out there. It doesn't, but I think it's a learning experience, and I think what I'm hearing is kind of the same feeling I had about kind of if this happens in the next
Sure.
time, and it sounds like we're on the same page, so that makes me more comfortable. And whenever as a staff, there's always gray area questions that happen, and and you have to make a decision. It's always nice to know the direction your board is giving you about what they want and what they feel is kind of their direction back to staff. And so the clearer I know that, kind of the more comfortable I am as staff. And so if I don't see clear direction, that's when I
think there's
I'm
a
more worried.
consensus, is what we're saying.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you. I'll tell you what, we'll let these fellas come up and talk for a few minutes and share their feelings. And you fellas can come up individually if you want to come up together. Or what?
Oops, sorry.
No, I got it. But come on up and you can talk for a few minutes and we'll... I'm going to keep you to task, though.
We'll introduce ourselves. At least
Yeah.
I'm Paul Edgar. I'm the land use chair of the Kenema Neighborhood Association. And
I'm Howard Post. I'm the chair.
I was at this meeting that approved this deal. So, and I went through and reviewed all of the documentation that was given to me. And the documentation that was given to me did not show or reflect in any way that it was a metal roof. And any understanding that I've had over all of the years, and that's more years than everyone here, about the 1740 that I've read and reread probably more times than any one of you have. And and I'm not trying to belittle you, it's just we've gone through this process many times, and I was part of the review groups that helped rewrite it. And we always understood with implicitly that metal roofs were not allowed. Period. End of statement. And so when this happened, and without ever being noticed, when I was here and had made comment, I would have made comment because we knew no metal roof in a National Registered Historic District of Kenema, which is different than a conservation district. And we're really trying to protect the inventory. We went to even a point where we went out and did a survey of all of the historic properties there to make sure that we're not degrading the inventory within Kenema in any way, shape, or form. And we all knew that we don't want to have any precedent-setting event that degrades or offers an opportunity to degrade the inventory and the national status of this registered district. So when this metal roof started to show up, and I made comment we went through a process of where we could have stopped it right then, before it ever even went onto the building, because we knew that it was something that should not have ever happened, and by code, should never have been allowed, and it was not an oversight. It should not have ever been allowed to happen, period. And in any event, we should have any proposal to even recommend it under the explicit nature of the way 1740 was written, discussed, interpreted, and Howard was even the chair.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Are the drawings that we saw here different than the ones you received?
I can't tell you that at this moment because I have not seen them.
We seen what we got. It said accessory buildings, a metal roof on an accessory building. You guys have the power to do an accessory building, but I don't think you have the power to do a full metal building, and it was never said anywhere that the building would have a roof on it other than an accessory building.
That's an important question, though. Were these drawings in any way altered from the ones you guys saw?
They were never presented to us, only the
But
breaks-
Paul, you were here at the meeting, correct?
Yes, I was at the
And
meeting.
These drawings were presented at the meeting. These drawings were on public record before the meeting, correct? Yes or no?
Not that were ever submitted to me. So
think
what
it's
was
so
submitted to me, what the submittal that goes out to the neighborhood association did not show any metal roof, display it, or do anything that gave us any inclination. And I want to get back to the key point. It's implicit in 1740, no metal roofs.
Without board approval.
No,
No,
metal roof,
that's
period.
without board approval.
Period. If we had been aware there would have been a metal roof put on, we would have been here. We weren't notified that the metal roof was going to be put on the main building. It said an accessory building. Didn't say anything about the main house. And that's a whole different game.
It's a whole different issue.
Than an accessory building. Kenema is the only registered National Historic District in Clackamas County. You know, and we were cited on the web and this stuff. I'm the chair, and it didn't say explicitly a metal building on the house. It said on the accessory building. If you want to go back and look it up, it's there.
Well, we didn't approve just the accessory building. We approved things in the front of the house, in the rear of the house. The drawing showed it. I have to tell you, I can't remember what I did February, let alone 3 hours ago. But what I'm saying is, these drawings are here. The drawings show it. The drawings do not say on there standing metal seam. They don't say that.
It is
No.
graphically represented.
But it's graphically on there.
I think that you're.
But I get where you're coming from. I do. I understand it.
I'm a preservationist. I'm trying to protect the historic integrity of the Kenema neighborhood and, this National Register District. It's very, very important to me. I'm passionate about it. And when this happened, it was like an affront. It was like being slapped across the face, knowing how hard we fought to have this explicitly spelled out in 1740. And so
Well, I'm
for
going
it
to
to
stop
be,
you right there because I want you to know I truly appreciate your passion and the respect you have, and I know that Kenema is unique, and it is, but I want you to know there was no cavalier attitude as far as passing something without issue, without knowledge. It never came to that, and there isn't any malicious bone about doing that. But I see what you're saying. I see in Kenema there's as much stuff that is downtrodden and neglected as there is preserved, and I know eventually that's going to come around. This is a property that was approved. I can't go back on that. Nobody here can, but I know where you're coming from. I get that. I know that this board would never do anything that would be detracting from the historic district. And you know what? I have to applaud you guys that somebody has to have the passion to keep it going. And if you guys aren't here, I don't know if anybody else is going to be the beacon for being here now. And I get that, but here's the thing. I can't have the board come back and try and figure out how to change that. That's beyond. But I from here on, we know that we have to deal with this, and nobody's going to try and degrade the district by trying to bring in things that aren't historic. But the code specifically says these things are not allowed. It says it without board approval. We are getting to a point in our lives where materials previously were shunned upon, looked down upon, are now technically historic. And so we have to look at those things and adjust. Christina's come up with a sound idea to try and give another layer of trying to make sure that we don't have anything get through the layers. I can read plans. It's what I do for a living. You're 100% right, Vicki, that not everybody can. You guys, because of your passion and your education, I guess I have to assume that you're going to be thorough because of that passion. And I need that from you coming in here to make sure that we're doing our job, and you're doing a great job of it. But at the same time, you fellas obviously are passionate, you know what you're doing, but you ought to be able to look at the public records, the documents, the drawings, and if there was an issue, it could have been brought up then. When I looked at the plans, all the plans that you fellas had, that the public had, shows that entire roof with the standing metal seam roof. It's clearly there.
Okay.
So, but I get it.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
As John said, we can't go back. It's regrettable that it worked out that way. But going forward, do you have any comment? Or are you pleased with how we resolve this in adding something to the staff report if alternative materials are proposed?
Well, it's done, number one, and number two, it's setting a precedent. So what are you going to do next time?
Well, I hear
What's
that.
done? The roof?
The roof's done.
Okay.
So were they going to come to?
But as I said, we can't really address that. We're trying to move forward. So what I'm trying to find out is comments from you about your feeling about how we're trying to prevent this from happening.
We wasn't notified that it was going to be a metal roof. I mean, we'll go back to this, go back and read the notes, and we got it from Tony. All this
And
stuff. It wasn't said, but I mean that's the point. But it also said you can't have aluminum windows and you can't have fiberglass. And so I mean, it's all there in the code.
Well, the biggest thing with this board is we tread this line about if we say this, we set precedents. If we do this, then we're going to set that precedence. And oftentimes that's what drives the decisions we make. Is it a 3-tab roof or is it architectural comp? And then we've modified things. We've gone from 3-tab to architectural. We've gone from 100% cedar siding to hardy plank.
That's fine, but it's still a historic district, and we changed
Yeah, it
the
is.
district, and we can't go back.
But
and
here's
now
the
it's
thing.
changed.
Let's go back to 1980.
That has nothing
when the
to do
house
with
was
it.
built.
It's a National Register Historic District, period.
And you've
we
got an
can argue all
ahistoric
that.
house in there.
Yeah, no, it's a non-historic house, but it says there will be no metal roof.
Okay.
And,
Well,
I don't. That's the
I think-
argument is done.
It's done.
Vicki, in your case, yes, I heard the comment that it should be spelled out. So, like yourself, I'm on, seems like 20 commissions or places and things that I'm doing, trying to serve the city and the county and public. And so, yes, I take time. I'm here. I'm working on this stuff. And I have an 1880 house in Kenema, and I'm trying to, it's been in the family 120 years, and we're just the people caretakers now. And what is important is trying to maintain something that was passed on to us, which is this whole area. But yeah, spell it out so that we have, that we can all see it, that we, that it's not skipped over or missed. And some things that staff, I think in this case, this was not a staff recommendation that should have been approved.
Well, we're not going to go there anymore.
Okay.
But we're done.
Okay.
But I appreciate that.
But
You guys, all I can say
it
is
should have been in front of all of us.
just keep coming, keep helping us out, and just keep having the passion.
Well,
Appreciate it.
one last comment was, when I brought it up, I felt that that somebody said I wasn't here or didn't know, and I felt that we got into a cover your ass mode, and in that part, I was here involved, and I felt that I had done everything I could do, and I would have never passed on this or voted or tried to say anything that would have given anyone any inkling of approval of this building had I known that it had a metal roof. And I have a pretty good eye. I'm not like you, but I have a pretty good eye on this stuff. And I felt like that this was not made to a point where I understood it. And I'm better than 99% when it comes to looking at these and reading them. So when it passes by me, then I'm saying it was not properly noticed, and therefore.
Okay, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My recommendation is actually we break for dinner and we can come back
Okay.
and do the 1940s census.
Is there anything, well, on there, is there anything else we need to discuss that's of
No,
consequence?
I think I was able to get the direction from the board.
Okay.
So, no, I think it's very helpful.
So we
thank
can
you.
adjourn this. What's that book you got? Oh, you got that book?
I thought you might find that interesting.
I have it. I got it for like
Would you believe me if I told you? Like I said, I appreciate all your work.
In some ways, that's really a better system. In other ways, the way we did it was a good system.
Yeah.
Which is better.
Public system is set up to mitigate discrimination.
Yep.
Thanks for coming.
And based it on qualifications, But I'll tell you what, I've written every person that I wanted to hire. Lots of times.
I can't get to that. Where is it? Agenda. Never mind. Okay, so that's work.
Okay,
That's
let's get rid of this. I'm tired of this.
fine. I mean, however,
I'm going to present that as an alternative. And I just thought that's great. Well, if we could do that, then that's
okay.
specific audit.
Let's get rocking here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna open it.
Okay.
Okay, so we're opening up the meeting back up, and we're not going to take roll because we did that at 6. But this is a public hearing.
Actually, and then if we could move the census presentation to after the public hearing. It was the leftover item on the work session. If we could move it to the end of the meeting,
Which one?
the presentation on census website.
Oh, the 1940.
yeah, we can just move it to the end of the meeting.
Okay, yeah, because we'll get into this. So, since this is a public hearing and these people were involved, we don't need to read this, so we can get right into it.
Right. There was a land use opening statement that's on the streaming video that talks just normal. And if anybody in the room would like the chair to read it in length again, you can. If not, it is read in detail and is on the.
But I will tell you, after staff presents comments, the applicant can come up and make comments. Then, because you've filled out a comment form, we'll have people testimony in favor, testimony in opposition, or neither, and then any rebuttal by the applicant. So we'll go in that order.
Okay.
So go ahead. Oh, do you want it to go down?
Yeah, it's hold on. I don't know why it did go up. I just noticed it.
I've got one of these in my house.
Do you really?
No. It's bigger. No.
So you just
I got a big TV though.
Apologize. Someone turned this off when we were in.
That Howard
So
dropped it down.
it'll be just a moment to load. I apologize. I can. If you want, we can pause in 2 minutes. We're back. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Let's rock.
Okay, this is a continuation of H.R. 1204, 28 John Adams, new construction in the McLaughlin Conservation District. Real briefly, the applicant initially submitted and received approval in H.R. 0908 for a new bungalow-styled home and a kind of 1.5-story garage with a little studio unit above it in 09. That approval lapsed, and the applicant came back this summer with revised drawings that kind of stripped away some of the bungalow detailing. Staff and the Historic Review Board gave direction to the applicant at the August meeting to come back. They kind of give 2 pieces of direction. One, to provide more detailed information and the submittal requirements, and also to restore some of the bungalow detailing back on the house. And on October 8th, the applicant submitted revised plan with an option A showing no dormers on the front and some additional bungalow detailing, and option B showing front and rear gable dormers. The applicant is requesting that the board approve both options to allow the applicant the highest flexibility during construction, though staff is recommending that the board approve option B only. This is showing the revised drawings, the building is in the same location. The applicant has just provided clear information on the contour lines and the dimensions of the buildings, and hopefully clearer to understand. The, if you remember, the front door was moved for a side entrance, but it is a front. It's oriented towards John Adams Street, though the actual door is on the side elevation. The applicant has continued to propose the one-car porte cochere. And then this is the garage, which has, because of the grading, has basically the ground floor is a garage, and then if you walk up the stairs, you kind of can go directly into the studio unit. The McLaughlin Neighborhood Association had a question about the use in there. You know, our residential design standards, non-historic to citywide, allow multiple uses for this. It could be, can have a bathroom. It does not have to bathroom. It could be finished. It could be not finished. It could have a sleeping area. All those things are allowed by building code, and the interior not really part of the Historic Review Board's review. The applicant could one day choose to make an accessory dwelling unit, which is allowed by code, where you apply for and receive approval for a separate upstairs dwelling unit where you could rent out the unit as a separate apartment as long as you lived in one of the two units as a property owner. That's a type 1 administrative process. You pay systems development fees equal to that of a multifamily unit. So I've actually explicitly kind of stayed away from that because the applicant could choose to do that today, tomorrow. It's not really relevant for the boards. The board's looking at the exterior and the massing, so it could be unfinished or finished. And so I've kind of specifically stayed away from that because it's not really purview of the approval criteria.
Christine, is this R6?
Yes.
And the street is...
This, yeah, I can open up the
I was just
OC
curious.
maps. This is a situation where it's a private driveway that comes up. So there's one more lot behind this that fronts Jefferson. The applicant is using a combined kind of alley driveway that the Ross and the applicant share. And then John Adams is...
What's the address of the house?
It's going to be addressed off of well, we've proposed it off of John Adams. I can see the fire department wanting to have a Jefferson Street address, but that's really more of the city's addressing process, and that may change at the application price.
Which do you consider the front of the house?
Historically, I would consider John Adams the front.
What's
just
the
because
setback for R6?
10 feet.
Okay.
And you're allowed, actually, porches are allowed to go 5 foot in. But yeah, he's at his setback just fine.
Yeah. I was curious on what the address was going to be.
You know, historically, you would have faced John Adams. The fire, for practical reasons, and EMS do not like and have made property owners in Oregon City change when they were historically addressed off of the main street, but their driveway access was off another one. They have over time actually changed because that's been a requirement of the fire department. So
Gotcha.
it very well may be a Jefferson address once it gets built, but that's not really my control.
No, I was curious on the setback.
Yeah. But yeah, I view, for setback purposes, it's viewed based this being the front of the lot. This shows option A. You can see the applicant has added knee braces as it has kind of beefed up the porte cochere porch and also the rear porch, and has the exposed rafters. But in this one does not show the front or rear dormer. Option B shows a front and rear gable dormer. So this is looking, this is kind of not a real, very odd for a pedestrian to be right at grade unless you're right in front of the house. You're about 8 feet below the grade on John Adams Street, so you'll probably end up looking more at the very bottom of the roof if you looked up from John Adams because of the grade. This is looking, if you were at the Roth's house and you were looking over, this is the elevation you see. This is the elevation, actually, if you would be kind of on the top grade and the door to the garage unit is behind you. And then this is the elevation on the neighboring property. I'll go back. Right here. So both the Roths and Denise McGriff had submitted additional comments this time around. The Roths submitted comments relating to the appropriateness of the portico share as they had in their initial application, and they supported the option that included the dormers and did not support option A that did not include the dormers. Denise McGriff, the McLaughlin Neighbors Association, had the following comments. She had questions about the studio garage, and hopefully my answers to that address that issue. She also, as with the initial, had comment about the portico share. The profile, I'm assuming, is the siding width, Denise? Yeah. And staff has recommended 4-inch lap siding for the cement board siding. The issue with the fiberglass, actually, I'm glad she brought up because I want to talk about it at a later, about how we condition fiberglass windows, because I am seeing some varying quality in products between fiberglass windows, and this may be a future work session item about how we best, when we approve fiberglass windows, what we really want and what we don't want. So I'll address that in the rest of the staff report. The overhead garage doors, the applicant has proposed to paint, and actually, so that'll address that. His son, who's here tonight, had garage doors that were stained, and they are wearing a little bit. I think that's one of the applicant's comments. Denise McGriff actually found the dormers on Plan B to be top heavy and actually recommended the option A as a better profile. And then the trim around the windows should be even on 3 sides and a slight shelf on the bottom. I think she was a little worried based on the applicant's submittal that there was too heavy of a top rail. That was more of a vernacular or maybe even a revival top, whereas a bungalow, you're going to have more of a bottom sill that's the heavier element, and you're not going to have the top and the side sills are going to be the same width. And I actually included that in my condition of approval just to make sure that that is brought into the final construction. As of before, I'm a bit torn on the portico share issue. I agree with the facts at hand that we do not have a history of portico shares in Oregon City. Generally, we're higher style. That doesn't mean to say there are not portico shares in this region that are smaller bungalow. The applicant has proposed a very proportionally sized one. It's 14 feet by 14 feet. Barely can get a 1-car in, and most likely will be probably more used as a extension of the porch. You've heard from both the neighbors and the McLaughlin Neighbors Association. I'm not really making any specific recommendations. I see both points, and I think either way findings can be made either way. So I am kind of deferring back to the board on your recommendations on that. I have recommended conditions of approval. The first 4 are kind of traditional. 5 again relates to the elevation, kind of the tall elevation of the south garage, which ends up, because of the grading, to be almost a story and a half. I recommend that they propose, and as was in 09, kind of a large mixture of evergreen and deciduous trees to make a buffer. And the applicant had asked if they could do it on their lot, or if because of the topography and the natural rock wall grading, if the property owner next door was amenable, could he put it on their property, just on their side of the line? And I thought that was fine. I mean, it meets the intent of a screen, a large screen that broke up that massing. Number 6 explicitly talks about the materials: wood or fiberglass windows and doors, wood or aluminum 4-inch smooth composite siding, concrete wood or natural stone, excluding river rock, on the porch pillars. And I wanted to bring up 6A and ask for further direction from the board on a potential addition of that condition of approval. I was just out 2 days ago finaling Mr. Edgar's previous house on 8th. And I looked at the windows he proposed, and they looked like vinyl windows. And they were not. They were fiberglass. And
That's what I thought, too.
I did not like them. I did not think that they met the quality of what we envisioned fiberglass windows to be. Seth, his son, who's here tonight on behalf of his father, his if you remember the house behind him that the board approved 2 years ago, those have Marvin fiberglass windows. I think they absolutely meet the intent of what we wanted. Marvin integrity. And so for a future work session, we can, I think, talk about it more in detail. But what I'd like to do tonight, and actually talking to the applicant, Steve, he wasn't as thrilled with how they turned out either. But what I'd like to do tonight is to recommend that they specifically allow the fiberglass Marvin integrity windows as installed in Seth's, or myself as staff really approve the alternative, because
Well, an alternative could be, Milgard makes a product called Milgard Essence.
right, and I approve the Milgard Ultra
Yeah, the
fiberglass, and I
Essence
did not like, and so
have a
because
more historic look to them.
right, so but we were pretty not vague, but we were pretty flat about fiberglass windows are allowed, and
Yeah.
so as we get more sophisticated in the future, we're going to really need to differentiate
make a
what we
list.
mean by
Yeah.
fiberglass. And so tonight, to be expedient, I'd like to use those, basically cite the Marvin windows that were in Seth's by address, 813 JQ Adams, as our kind of clear and objective material, so I can compare that, because I would feel very uncomfortable if we approved as the windows that were put in on the other one, because I just don't think they met. And maybe it's if they were painted, but they also don't have the profile that the other ones do.
profile.
Yeah, and it's the shininess because it was a white
Yeah.
fiberglass window. So I wanted to bring that up, and I'd like to make an amendment to 6A when we get to the conditions of approval.
Isn't there in the code about that, about the color? That's got to be kind of a dull.
Well, we didn't say that. I mean, that's the thing. The previous one, we just said you need to put fiberglass windows in. So I just wanted to be a little, as we move forward, I think we just need a little more savvy about how we approve the fiberglass. And then we're never going to keep up with every new one. And so even like giving direction about because I looked at the spec sheet and I did not, what I saw and what was installed, I was surprised. So. And then specifically, I think going to this bungalow style is I really recommend a minimum 3-part color scheme, and then the window color being the darker hue to make sure that it is either a painted on or it's a fiberglass with a pre-painted darker hue color, because I think that goes a long way too.
Does that include the sill or just the window?
No, actually, we can make sure the window itself for a true bungalow design. The paint color where the window is the darker of the color scheme, and then the trim is a little bit lighter, than your body can be different. But that is I think that's kind of your slam dunk way to make sure you really highlight the bungalow detailing just to get that color scheme. It doesn't mean that just because you don't have that color scheme it's not bungalow, but because we have a house that's kind of trying to be more bungalow, I think this color scheme will really help that. But that is something the board can choose to amend if they want to, if they think it's necessary. Specifically, 8, that the bungalow, option B, bungalow style is chosen, and option A that does not have the dormers is not proposed. And 9, this brings into Denise McGriff's comments about the window trim, that you have a bungalow window trim where if there isn't, where the window sill is the prominent, is the larger, and the top and the sides are. You don't have that kind of colonial revival top or vernacular top sill. I'm just worried that once again takes away from the bungalow nature of the application. So those are some. I'd say 8 and 9, or actually 9 and 7 is something I'd be interested in if the board would like to amend or agree. And then you'll notice 1 is not in there, which is if you do not believe that if you're not comfortable with the porte cochere, then you need to add another condition not allowing it, or an amendment to 6. Or if you're fine with the porte cochere, you can leave the conditions at. And that, is what I have. The as I indicated, the applicant is being represented, is not able to make it tonight, and Seth Ediger's son is here tonight to stand in for his father, and is kind of willing to answer any questions. And feels that he's been given pretty good direction. And the goal is to get an approval tonight if he can. But if he feels for some reason that what's being approved is he hasn't been, it's not meeting the clear direction he was getting, he may ask at the end to continue it one more month if possible. But all I ask is before a vote is given, just to kind of give him a chance to request a continuance at the very end if he feels he needs to, because he thinks he has his direction, but he wants to give his, defer to his dad. And then Denise McGriff sent in her comments that were already in the email on letterhead. I just want to add that as Exhibit A in the record. It's no new information. It's just on official letterhead this time. And that is all I have, unless the board has any questions.
No. Okay, let's have the applicant come up. And as I stated before, if anybody wants to make a comment, there it is. Okay, come on up. Thanks.
So you guys have screens up?
Yeah. But if you guys can, or if you can state your name and your address, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. My address?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. My name is Seth Ediger. My address is 813 JQ Adams.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so as Christina mentioned, I'm here on behalf of my father. I apologize, I feel I'm a little late to the party. You guys have kind of been going for a little while already with this one. But up late trying to get to the bottom of understanding all the plans and details. Basically, I think my dad agrees with all the conditions of approval at this point that Christina has presented, with exception to, I believe it was 8, or what was it, the porte-cochere?
That actually isn't on there right now because I'm deferring to the board on this one. You can go to the last. Oh, don't worry, I'll figure it out.
Okay, so, or I guess that would be 10?
Yeah, regarding the broker share, they want to see it.
Oh, is it?
It's not conditioned yet.
You want
So that would be 10.
make it something?
So it's not conditioned?
No, it's no.
So, with exception to that, I think he feels that the porte-cochere is designed in a manner to fit well with the proportions of the house. And as Christina mentioned earlier, porte-cochere is sort of one of those things, I think, if you look around Oregon City, there is some evidence of them, and it's not, to me, it's not one of those design features that turns it into a bungalow or doesn't turn it into a bungalow. It's definitely something that you find on bungalows when it's proportioned and detailed correctly. So I think he would seek conditions of approval for the porte-cochere from the board, maybe insight with details or maybe some extra insight with proportions, and then also his preference would be to number 8 to go with option A or leave both options open.
Well, let me just say everything looks fantastic as far as drawings. It was all great.
Sure.
Having either option A or B just means option A happens. But politically correct, hey, if we put them both on, I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. The porte-cochere, it is a historic element to a bungalow. 100% agree with that. And it is in proportion, I think, to the house. I think it's just fine. The question is from the neighborhood, from the neighbors, obviously, they don't think it's appropriate for the house because you can't find it anywhere else. But
the public still has.
But I can make a comment on that from the public record of what they've stated. So that's what's being stated. So, you'd mentioned there's some evidence of it. It would be great if there was pictures to show to back that up. But I know where you're coming from. I get it. So that's all I wanted to say. So, does anybody have
And I
any comments?
apologize if I don't have
No, that's fine.
sufficient
No, that's okay.
pictures or evidence.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. I've been to the site, but just from the street, and it's kind of hard to see and envision things
Jefferson?
from Jefferson.
Yeah.
Well, I also I drove on John Adams as well.
Sure.
But it's difficult for me to see and to envision things.
Sure.
I understand the garage with the studio because it's a lower level. But I don't understand why, rather than have the porte cochere, you don't put that garage up above next to the house. It seems to me that there's room there.
Sure.
So why the need for the porte cochere and the garage below if you could do it above?
I think the topography sort of.
Site plan.
Can I just thumb through it here?
And if you want,
There
you
you go.
can use this if you want to.
Sure.
Right over here.
Sorry.
Do you guys see
Yeah.
the mouse as well?
Over here.
Yeah, you can move around.
Oh, super cool.
This
Man,
is
high
steep.
tech. I would just like to add, just quick, that it felt like we were in the Starship Enterprise when Christine was lowering and raising the screen. The speakers were coming
Well,
out.
let's get through this warp speed.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so to me, I believe that the design guidelines, kind of require the garage to be in the rear. Is my understanding. I think that's kind of where it started, and then also, there's such a significant topography difference between the two. So between this back space here.
Is it pretty flat up where the house is going?
Yeah, this all is very flat. This whole.
So your question is,
Why,
could it be in
if-
this corner?
Yeah, if
Yeah.
it's flat up there, why can't it be there? Obviously, you have a driveway that's going to be going up there anyway.
Sure. Yeah, no. I think. If the board would approve a garage in the front of the house, with the back of the garage facing the front of the street, it's maybe something that he would have considered.
Yeah,
I think we're. Yeah.
It would be a detached garage. It could be connected through a breezeway, but that seems reasonable. I will. I think we should leave that open if your dad would like to consider that, provided it's one story. I would say that he may not have done that because that's kind of a view in that direction as the hill drops off. Come fall and winter time when all those deciduous trees open up, you can see.
Can I ask you a question?
So.
Could a garage be put there in addition to a garage with an ADU? In other words,
It's a garages?
yeah. I'm just asking.
It would essentially be a garage and an outbuilding.
Your two accessory buildings over it's 200 square feet, probably not by code. I
Okay.
mean, I'm not. This is not historic. This is more.
Yeah,
land
that's
use
what I'm
planning.
asking. It's,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think really the big one is that we're trying to orient the house
Yeah.
towards the front, and I think it doesn't quite seem right
I see what you're saying.
to have the back of the garage right adjacent to the front of the house.
And this whole, with that public comment I want to come up, but I think this is trying to go back to 2009, but, I think it really came to the recommendation that you need to face the house to John Adams historically, and then once you do that, I think then your garage is attached and it's behind the house, and then, I think it declined after that
Right.
point, where I don't even know if that option was even thought about. So I don't know the answer because I don't think it even occurred to think
Well,
about.
I'm
that
not
as
trying
option.
to make work. I know you put a lot of work into these drawings, and you've been here a few times. But it seems to me that that's an option. And also, if we're going to have trouble with the fire department and the EMTs, if you have a John Adams address, why? And it's right off Jefferson, and you can't access it off John Adams. Why not?
Well, I don't
have
know.
a Jefferson
Yeah,
address?
I don't know if that's going to change by pivoting the garage. I mean, that's just a separate issue. In
Yeah.
regards
Oh,
to-
I know
yeah,
that's
yeah.
disconnected. But I'm just saying, in general, it would.
But you're talking like, hey, get rid of the porte cochere and put the garage
Right.
there.
Sure.
Is what
Right.
your point is.
Probably, if that were the case, then you probably would seek to turn the whole house around
Yeah.
and face the.
And face
Face,
Jefferson.
Face the. Yeah, is that Jefferson?
Yeah.
I'm losing
Yeah.
my
That's
mind
right,
here
yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But the house. This is the front of the house. Face the house over this.
Exactly.
Way down. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we've always, I can tell you staff's direction, and and once again, this is a particular situation, but in general, the design guidelines have kind of been pushing houses to face what they historically would have based on their plat, rather than kind of their ingress egress, because that's traditionally how it was. So that's kind of one of those overarching statements, and then you get down to a specific situation, and once again you may say, well, this alternative, because of X, Y, Z, it makes just as much sense to not face it. But there's other times where I would really say, no, it's very important that you face the Main Street. And actually, that's what we did make the Roths do.
Yeah.
Do you think it's important here?
Yeah, and I think it is.
too.
Yeah, we both, and I think with the Roths, making them face onto John Adams, when you were on 3rd, you really see that front of their house, and it is a prominent, it's welcoming. And I think that's the same thing as we want these new homes to be oriented towards the public view and not kind of like hidden. The idea is that these are oriented as they historically would have been.
Yeah, these are alley accessed houses, which is different than your traditional pull up and park in the front, and that's okay. But I think it should be treated as an alley accessed house, and the front of the house faced towards the west.
Okay. Well, as a person who lives on the bluff, my house and every house on my street faces the bluff. It's pretty funky. It's historic, but we've got to come in the back way and look at my neighbor's garbage cans to and for them to walk all the way up and around, and I just don't think it works very well personally.
But you got a view.
I'd have a view anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments, or did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I guess, I think maybe reiterate what I said before, after my nerves have settled a little bit. Just that, the porte-cochere and even the
Dormers.
Dormers. This is maybe off the record, but this is my personal opinion. But
It's all on the record.
these features are maybe not, while they are specific to bungalow, if they're proportioned and detailed correctly, they don't make a bungalow a bungalow. I believe if you take the dormer and the porte-cochere even off of this thing, it's a bungalow through and through. And having said that, I think, whatever options and whatever conditions of approval the board can offer, I think we're open to pursuing. So.
Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Right.
Well, as I said,
Done in the stand now.
for now.
We'll remove the shackles later.
So we've got testimonies in order. The first would be Kathy Roth. I'm going to tell you, you can come on up and state your name and address, but you've got basically 3 minutes to discuss what's on your mind. But if you could state your name and address, please.
Kathy Roth, 211. Well, I was thinking John Adams. We were 218 John Adams, but then the fire department moved it. And actually, when they moved our address to Jefferson, just for your point of interest, they changed that lot. I believe it's 209. They changed the other two also. So all 4 addresses around there were changed to Jefferson Street. So it already has a Jefferson Street address on our paperwork. So I have 2 issues. I do not like option A at all. I think it looks like a ranch-style 1950s California ranch. Option B is much more preferable to me. And with the porte-cochere, I do not think that's applicable to the district either. When we were building, we were the first house privileged to go through the new historic rules. And they went from that at that point 1 page to 90-some pages. So I got really familiar with these rules. And the house did have to face John Adams Street. We had to have very specific design elements. I spent a lot of time, brought in anywhere from 50 to 75 photographs, houses similar to what we were building from Gladstone, River Road, Portland. None of those were acceptable because they weren't built in the Oregon City area. And specifically, we're talking about the dormers having, I wanted 5 windows. That wasn't done in Oregon City, so we weren't allowed to put 5 windows up above on the dormer. And there were quite a few elements like that we were told, no, you cannot do it because it wasn't done here. So my contention is that if we're going to do this with one house, we need to do this across the board with everybody. We all need to play by the same rules. And there aren't portico shares here in Oregon City. I can think of one. I would be amenable to putting the thing in the back there between the back of the house and the cliff. And I know there's a little bit of a grade difference, but I'm
sorry,
also...
Kathy, what thing?
Pardon me?
What thing? You'd be amenable to placing what thing?
The
Back to-
garage or whatever. Oh, did I say
Okay.
thing? I'm sorry. There at the back of the house. I'm very familiar with the landscape here also. We had a highway construction company parked in our yard for 3 weeks. There's not a very much of a grade you can see there between the 210 and the 213. It's only a 3-foot difference. And we took a way bigger grade out of our place than that. So it would be very possible to come up the shared driveway and turn around and go behind the house. So those are my points. But I really would stress option B. Oh, you didn't start the clock. I've still got 3 minutes.
You've got 20 seconds.
Anyway, I would really like option B and no porte-cochere.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Can I ask the Ross just a question while you're, it's pretty rocky around your house, right? Yeah.
15 dump trucks of dirt to get along.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Who are you and why are you here?
Where do you live?
I could ask the same of you.
That's what I'm asking myself.
Denise McGriff, representing the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association, and I live also on a rock pile, so I'm very familiar with rocks and how you get your house in there, although mine was put in by blasting. So let me start out with a couple of points here. Those of you who know me know that I actually do live in a bungalow.
Yes.
And a lot of my comments that I discussed with the Neighborhood Association from the previous application had to do with us not having a faux glow, as I like to call them. I ascribe to the philosophy that you can have elements of our historic resources on your house, but I don't suggest that we make them look like them, because they're not. And we definitely want to differentiate between what's new construction and what's original construction. So that being said, I also looked at both of the houses over the time that they were being built, and I will have to tell you that I walked up to the house on John Adams and touched the windows, and I said, wow, if this is fiberglass, this is a really bad version of it, because it really does look very inexpensive, and I think the fact that it's white really stands out on that house. This is the house
one on 8th or the one behind?
Excuse me, the one on 8th. Yeah, I looked at the
John
one on 8th too. I mean, the
Okay.
one on the alley, because I parked my car and walked down.
Gotcha.
Which is why I had concerns about the garage doors, because they were already starting to look like they've been there about 15 years and need some more maintenance to them. So that was my concern in talking to the group about, is it going to be these things? And we didn't have the samples or the pictures of the things when the first version of the report came out. Saying that, I do want to say, number one, I commend the applicant for submitting drawings that you could actually read, that had measurements, that had height. It really makes everybody's job, including yours, easier if you can look at something and you can say, oh, that's a 712, or that's the scale, because the first set, I didn't really know what I was supposed to be looking at, and I didn't want to try to scale it out and get that totally wrong.
Right.
So I just want to put in a plug for that you should set the bar high on what people submit, because it really makes a lot of difference. So in setting that bar, I really think it's inappropriate that the applicant is requesting that he be able to do option one. You know, it's kind of like picking from Chinese food menu. You get column A, column B. I think when you submit something, staff has the option of suggesting some things, but I think to leave the whole thing wide open, then why are we going through this public hearing where we're trying to meet standards and look at the development proposed against the city standards? There isn't anything in there that says you can do this, this, or this. So I would recommend that you decide on something and not kind of make this sort of everything in the world. The reason that I brought up the porte cochere again is that I am not looking at the region, I'm not looking at the state, I'm not looking at the nation, I'm looking at the context in which a porte cochere would be appropriate in Oregon City. And those of you that know the Mount House on Center Street, that is the only one that I am aware of. And that is a very large house, and yes, it is proportioned to it, but the research that I've done over time on bungalows, since I have one and I'm very interested in them, is that everything that I've been able to find, these are larger houses, particularly on the East Coast. In California, you see the green and green. They are huge. They're very large homes. And that works with them. I just find that it's not appropriate in Oregon City on this particular style of home in the Dutch Camp neighborhood, which is older than the other neighborhoods in the city, that we have an element that would not have been introduced here. And although I think it's a nice touch, I think that the idea that Board Member Yates suggested of why isn't the garage, that was kind of my question. Why isn't the garage up there? And it seems to me that on the profile of the site plan with the garage, if we had a little scissor, we could cut that out and put it up there on the site plan and move it around to see where it could fit. Seems to be more appropriate, although you probably draw it faster than I could do that. So I just think that that's a viable option, and it gets them what they want. And since the house is addressed on Jefferson, as she pointed out, and Kathy and Chuck pointed out, I think even if you had the side of the garage, because I just sat there and drew it in, and I thought, well, okay, you could have it sit like this, and you can drive into it. It could still work. So I think it's something you could consider. I appreciate the fact that the profile is thinner. I've noticed on some of the other projects that have been built by Mr. Ediger is that the profile of the Hardy plank is very wide, and it's just, let's get that down. The windows, I am assuming that they are vertical. They look rather horizontal on here to me, kind of squat and short, where, again, houses in that particular neighborhood, they're very vertical. Again, 1/1 I think is appropriate. I think those were really just the additional points that were brought up. And I think that you guys are going to really look at this and make the best decision that you can. And I appreciate the fact that you guys do look at this and that you do take your time and you review this in the context, because whatever's built, we're going to have to live with it. Unfortunately, we're going to have to live with those white windows on that house, but I just want it to be the best that it can be. McLaughlin neighborhood is a very special place, and I think it deserves additional consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. Okay. Does the applicant want to rebut anything that's been discussed? You can come back up.
Would you mind coming back up so I can ask you a question?
Sure.
And just to remind of, a lot of things, there's sometimes some dialogue back and forth. Just remember to always allow the people here, the public, to be able to interject new public comments if new information comes out.
As we're talking.
Sure.
I had a question about the posts supporting the... Okay, so I read on here there are 4x8s that are cut towards the bottom with an S-curve. Would you mind explaining that a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So there's not a fantastic drawing of this, so I appreciate the question. But basically what you have is these are all brackets, right, which we're all very familiar with. However, here there's not room for a bracket. But to maintain the style and the look, you just have a 4x4 that protrudes. through the top there. I mean, it's exactly like this. It's a 4x4 that, I don't know, you see just the little square right there?
Yeah.
That 4x4 is still coming out right here, but instead of having the angle piece that comes down there, it's got
like
an
this?
S curve. Yeah, right there. So
Okay.
if I can make an amendment and add that drawing in the...
We can add that to the phone.
It's Exhibit B.
Yeah, I don't know if all of you can see that, but that's, or can visually picture it, but that's... Yeah, that's...
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, and the 5/4 by 10 that protrudes 2 inches over the siding.
Yeah, so that's this. It's the trim that covers the beam here. So that's there. That's here. Let me know if I'm moving this mouse.
It's like a belly band right there below.
So there's a 5/4 by 10 and then a 2-inch trim that comes out.
That sticks out. I believe that sticks out 2 inches from it'd be the sheeting, and then you have it's called a drip.
You got,
You have
Drip
a
trim or
brush.
something. That's that top little deal here. I don't know is this a PDF, Christina?
No, that's my
Yeah,
PowerPoint.
okay, I'm not going to mess with it. But,
you've got a cap there, and then you've got some.
then you got a cap that sticks out
some
protrudes
Z-mount.
another inch or something. I don't
Yeah,
have
so
it right here, but
I'm just making sure that it's not quite literally a 10-inch piece of trim that's sticking out 2 inches proud of the
no,
siding.
it's like a belly band, and then there's probably like a little thing here, and then the Z flash.
right.
Okay.
I have a question. It's maybe more for Christina than for the applicant, but I thought you discussed having the front of the house face John Adams. Yet when I look at what's the front under option A, I don't see a door. So how
Remember
is
it's
that
at
the
the
front?
side.
Right, and that
Yeah, the
was
door is at the
yeah,
front.
that had not changed since August, which is the door is actually facing the side, but the front
left.
I mean the front architecture is facing the street. The door is just on as a side entrance.
right here.
So if you
Oh,
look
the door
at
is right
the
here. I
left,
see.
you can kind of
Okay.
see that.
Oops.
Yes,
Yeah,
it's right there.
Okay, got it.
So that had not changed since the August submittal, and I agree that one small element doesn't change the fact that the front architecture of the house is what faces John Adams.
Could you go to the elevation? Thanks. Well, historically on a bungalow, to address Denise's concerns that the neighborhood, that area has taller, skinnier windows, which is more akin to homes that are from the Victorian period, turn of the century. Bungalows typically would have, I agree, a little taller window on the first level, but always a smaller window on the second level. So there's a proportion grade. Right. They're looking a little squatty from what you're saying. But on a bungalow, there'd be more of a horizontal pattern to them. The gable window's a bit tall, but I see what you're talking about. I just wanted to address that. The other thing I wanted to address was your comments that you made regarding new construction. We can't make them look identical. We can't make them look perfectly like an old house, so we shouldn't try. We've got delineated from new construction. I can tell your house is much newer than anything around there. I mean, that's just how it is. And I'm not having an opinion. I'm just making the argument that, okay, porte cocheres aren't in the neighborhood. But could that be an element, something that would delineate from the others? Does it fit in? I'm just throwing this out. I don't have a strong opinion on this. But it's kind of a bone of contention. Is it something where you start this all over and say, get rid of that, you've got to put a garage there? Or could you say, look, this is in proportion, it fits, but taking away a dormer, does that make that porte cochere even more of a dominant element? Does the gables help soften that? These are things I'm bringing up that if somebody has a thought, if there's discussion for it, as far as asking or comments that were made.
My personal opinion, I guess maybe I should hold this to myself because I am part of the neighborhood and maybe it actually counts. But just to throw another wrench in the whole thing is we're all kind of all share a little bit of a different opinion on what really signifies a bungalow in historical Oregon City.
It runs the gamut.
I'm sorry?
It runs the gamut.
Yeah, and I'd probably put 25 miles on, these historical roads jogging every week. And I appreciate all the historical aspects, but there's no one bungalow that's the same. They're all just a little bit different. And, when you combine that with the fact that it's new construction too, and I think trying to make, sense out of having the house facing, I would call it more of a cliff. I'd say it's not quite a 8-foot drop off, Christina. I'd say it's more like a 14-foot drop off. It just kind of makes a little bit more, practical sense with.
Yeah.
And I would argue that historically, probably somebody building their house then would make it accessible to that rear entry, because they would need some way to,
Yeah.
I would like to say something about the vernacular style. I think in a lot of the historic homes you see signs that say vernacular. Vernacular encompasses the whole look of Oregon City and all kinds of styles from Queen Anne to bungalows. Personally, I have a house that I always thought was a bungalow, and when we put it on the historic register, they called it a vernacular with bungalow elements, which I see in this house, a vernacular with bungalow elements. And the porte cochere may not be something that you would see in Oregon City, but there's a lot of homes that were demolished in Oregon City that may have had one. Who knows? I think it fits, and I don't think taking away the dormers makes it stand out any more than it does.
If we called it a carport, would that change anyone's opinion? Because there are a lot of carports in Oregon City.
Someone has a comment. Can I go ahead and let them make a comment? Or
Yeah,
question?
Because once again, we tend to be a little more dialogue oriented in this review, so it's always need to allow people to comment
That's
at the
fine.
end. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you just step down, or can I sit on the side here?
You can sit right here. Keep you in the hot seat. But you can come on up and ask a question.
Yeah, well, there was a house there.
It was a little small shack, basically, right?
It was a very old home. It had been there a long time.
Yeah.
And the front door was on the side. It faced like they've got this front door.
That was a great comment.
It was a really good one, yeah. I know what it was. Because of the age of this neighborhood, I don't think that it's appropriate to be experimenting with design. I think we need to stay with our design standards. We spent a lot of money and a lot of time coming up with those design standards, and I don't think that it's appropriate to experiment with, somebody could have done this in 1860 and driven their carriage in there, and it may have happened, but it didn't. So I think we need to really stay specifically with the design of the neighborhood and not start on little Disneyland trails.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other comments for anybody before I close the public hearing?
Can we comment after you close?
We talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But if you want to ask a question, I open it back up. But I haven't done anything yet.
I do have one thing. It goes back. If you could move back to the site plan. I just want to remind everybody, and this may not change your opinion, but the garage is in a sense a 1.5-story, 2-story building, 1.5-story architecturally, and the idea was to kind of nestle it into the landscape a little bit.
Yeah.
So if you do move it over on a more flat land, you are going to get a true 1.5-story piece of architecture. So which totally may be fine, but
That is not fine.
No. But what I'm saying is, if that there needs to be some more analysis to be done to determine if it is still appropriate.
Sure. And
what I worry about is we can't do that tonight.
Probably it would turn into a resubmittal.
Yeah. So that's just my only comment is the reason it was put back there was to be nestled in a little more. So I just want to be wary that if you do open that up, as a staff, I would like to see a little more detail on that before recommending a condition.
And you don't want to resubmit?
I don't think at
question.
this point. Yeah, I don't think at this point we want to. I don't know that you guys want to review again. I don't know, maybe.
No.
It seems like you guys do have a fun time, though. I mean, until
Yeah, it's 8 o'clock.
you know.
We had fun time until it was 8.
I haven't achieved my goals. Okay. Does anybody else have any other comments?
No.
Denise?
John, I'm going to put this all on you because you gave me the idea. No, okay. I think that I guess I'd like to suggest that you go ahead and consider making some decision on the house, but I think that I would suggest and ask that you do continuation of that portion of the hearing that involves the garage, because I think that there are some options there that have not been considered, and I think I would like to see what staff says about it. I'm not so sure that a 1.5-story garage may be appropriate there, but I think a garage over there, and it's not going to require a whole lot of additional work by the applicant, because I went back to try to find my previous stuff from 2 years ago, and I found part of the garage, but I didn't find all of it, which is why I asked the question in my report, what's going on with the garage.
Yeah, we had drawings with it last month, or the month before.
Yeah, and
They were in there
weren't-
from the
yeah.
original.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
they were there. I had a hard time finding them, but they were in that file.
Yeah.
But where it's situated now, it's tucked behind the house that's in front. It's kind of subdued, 1.5 stories. I kind of remember vaguely talking about mitigation with landscaping.
Yeah, you were talking about that.
And the idea of what you're saying is valid. The other part of it is, this is all to the left, kind of behind a house. It kind of keeps that feature of openness where the garage is now. I get the idea of putting a garage up there. It's a logical place. But I guess that's something we would discuss. Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Okay.
If it's appropriate, that
Is that
portion of
some-
it be continued.
Is that something, Christina, if we were to discuss this and make a recommendation that you could break this into 2 parts? I'm not saying that we would do that.
Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Yeah. You could make a preliminary finding tonight to let the applicant know that, these are the conditions related to the house, but you're not making a formal decision until
Yeah.
it comes back. So it's a continuation.
Yeah.
You can give certainty and, we can spell out everything, but you can't bifurcate the approval. It's just a continuation.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then I'm going to officially close the public hearing. So we can talk amongst ourselves.
Do you want to go to conditions?
I have a lot of thoughts here. One, sure, sorry. A lot of thoughts here. One, I don't think the portico share is appropriate. If he wants to maintain the massing and continue the deck out, I think that would be fine. But to have an actual portico share, I don't think is appropriate. I also spoke with the applicant last time he was here, and we kind of went back and forth about the concrete patio versus a wood, and I really think a wood would be best. I think we should approve the garage, the 1.5-story garage, with this application, with the condition of approval that the details that weren't illustrated on the previous submittal mimic those that are illustrated here, as far as the trim, the bracketing, those sorts of details.
Are you talking about option A or option B?
Option B. Also, I think he should go with option B. Let's see here. I think most of staff's recommendations are great. I would change number 4 to read that all railings, decking, and stairs shall be finished, not necessarily painted, but finished to complement the house body and trim.
Does that mean paint stain? Like you could stain it natural wood?
Yeah.
Decking, okay.
I was curious. Well, I assume that we're talking about 4-inch exposure wood
Yes.
lap. Okay,
Yeah.
and I would clarify that.
I think it could be 4 or 4.5. Historically, it's either one of those. 5 is wide, but 4 to 4.5 is usually a variant.
Yeah.
We've generally done 4 just to stick with the.
Really? Does it say that in the code?
Well,
No.
if you get a
Well,
5 and a
we don't
quarter,
enforce it.
if you get a 5 and a quarter Hardy, you have a 4-inch exposure.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I
okay,
get it.
And I think that is
Smooth. We said smooth.
Okay,
Right?
painted as finished.
yeah, I think it should be finished instead of painted.
And then 4-inch reveal.
Was anybody, just before you finish, does anybody want to discuss any issues or have any comments?
Yeah,
on
if you're not going to have the porte cochere, how are you going to finish that side of the house if you're just going to have decking? Is it just going to be kind of out there?
Oh, I'm saying he could keep the porte cochere element, that structure that's extending out, if there was a deck underneath it, because it would be reasonable to have.
Oh, so
a
no,
window
not so you could
That's
drive
not the
a.
intent of why it's there.
No.
I know that's not the intent.
It's 100% for the garage is over here. I want to be able to pull up and park and walk
And
right
not
into
get
the house.
rained on.
I totally understand that. I'm saying if it was a deck, it would make sense.
It would
I would hate
make
to
it
say.
wouldn't make sense.
Okay, question, but is a porte cochere roof with that deck is not
It doesn't make sense.
something that's been in
It's just a
this
covered porch.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
The massing looks nice and it makes sense with the entry. That's kind of my thought.
Well, I do have a comment about the porte cochere. I'm glad that you don't like it because I thought I was going to be the only one who didn't. I don't think it's something that we found here previously. I don't think different rules should apply to different people. And so I just don't think it's appropriate. And the reason I suggested the garage above is not because I don't like the garage where they have it. It was just kind of to if we're going to take away the porte cochere, well, how can we get them closer to the house and be undercover? That was the only reason for it. I'd like to see the porte cochere go. They can leave the garage where it is, and I have in my house it works pretty well. I have a garage below, my house is above. We pull up, it's not covered, unload the car, and then back it back into the garage. My other problem with the porte cochere is I kind of feel if we open this up, even in new construction, we open a can of worms because then everybody in the neighborhood like me who has to get out in the rain to unload my groceries, I could come in with a design and say, look, the massing is right, this fits against my house, and I want a porte cochere too. Look, there's one right up the street. And I don't want to set that precedent.
Yeah.
So if you're going to get what everybody should.
Yeah.
Well,
Let's see where it's
then
going.
the same question applies. What do you do with that side of the house if you don't have a porte cochere?
Well, there's a covered porch that goes up to the front door that's already there.
So you have a step that goes up?
Yeah, or 2 steps, and then you're up onto that walkway to the door.
Yeah, obviously they have to do a little more design work on it, but I don't see it's a problem.
How do you feel about dormers?
I like B.
Hey, Mom?
I agree with the majority of the things that were said, although I have no opinion about the porte cochere. I can't say the word porte cochere, except that there's no argument against it, other than a personal opinion about how it looks. And so in that case, I would let the builder, the owner, decide whether they have a porte cochere or not, as long as it meets the specifications that we have in the design.
There's no argument against it?
No, I don't think there is. One is there's only one in the neighborhood, but there's in the greater neighborhood of the Portland metro area, there are porte cocheres in that size of house. So to argue that it wouldn't have ever been built in Oregon City only says that that design never made it to Oregon City in that period.
But
It could have made it at some other time if house designs hadn't changed. So to say because it didn't happen then doesn't mean it can't happen now.
But what we've done in the past is we've limited the architectural elements to what was in Oregon City, and that would be, to me, changing the rules.
Yeah, it would,
Well,
certainly it would change the rules. I
The
guess I don't
size
have a
of the
problem with
house, the size of the house that's across the road is not in line with the neighborhood. The Roth house is huge. You don't see any houses like that in that neighborhood. It's the only one.
Not with that blunt garage.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem with rules changing over time as people rethink their positions on different issues. I mean, I wish I could still pay taxes like they paid in 1920, but we don't. And I think that should apply in a broader general sense.
Yeah, I know of, and I'm only trying to keep things to Oregon City. You make a valid point. I know of a very much craftsman bungalow in Westland that has a porte cochere. And it's a small bungalow. And that's the only one I've ever seen in this vicinity. I can't comment of what could have been here, what might have been, or what didn't make it. I see your argument, sure. I also see this argument. So, did you have anything else on your list?
Well, I would encourage the applicant to examine a pedestrian access off of John Adams Street. That is something that would have been there historically, being that it faced that street, and some landscaping to go along with that. I don't think it should be a condition of approval, but I would encourage you to examine
You mean
that.
heading down that edge there?
Some stone steps with ferns and native landscaping would help to tie all that together. Because we're looking at a house very specifically, but we're also looking at the site as well. And I don't think we comment all that much usually on landscaping and the broader features, but in this case I do think that is important. So that is the majority of my comments.
It's sounding like we're getting differing opinion on the porte cochere, so it may be worth to take a informal polling just to see where we're going for. just to help wrap up the, because I'm writing some potential conditions of approval down.
Man, it's just one of those dinged if you do and dinged if you don't.
Yeah.
It's like trains,
I agree with what you're saying, but the precedent that we've gone by and looked at is what has Oregon City done, not what has the greater Portland Metro done. There's some really nice houses in Northwest that I'd like to recreate down here, but it's just not what this district's
And that's a valid
history
point.
is.
That's a valid.
It's just like you could walk through Selwood. Selwood was very much of a builder's neighborhood, so there's smaller homes. People tore things down and put up bigger things. But you wouldn't find something like that there. That's there. Oregon City is kind of a hodgepodge. It's a hodgepodge. There's not a real consistent area of ginormous homes. They're smaller. There's a lot of old stuff. So, I don't know. There's not a predominant amount of bungalows in Oregon City. It's not like a Pasadena or something like that where you'd see a lot of this stuff. So it would be rare, if not non-existent, that it ever happened because of just how it is. So if we're going to stick to precedent, and we had to deal with at 6 o'clock somebody that was trying to make us think that we're going on a slippery slope. Because the whole thing, most of our decisions are made with, if we do this, we set precedents for the next Joe. So, I can't listen to you.
Sorry.
That is a good one.
A bone jarring slope.
But you know what else? We were talking about. We were talking about how we need to make it easy for people that want to better our city.
I know.
And we're going to be cutting them off at the knees every time they want to do something to better. I agree
with that
This
too.
is like the third time this guy's been here.
Okay, no, I disagree. I mean, I know I'm all for making a house livable, allowing you to add a bedroom or a bathroom, or not bump it out so far, or do something so you can have a family live there. But this is just so you don't get wet when you unload your groceries.
Well, I also
and most
think it adds
people
to
in
the
the neighborhood
house.
get wet when they
I think it
unload
adds
their
to the
groceries.
house. I think it adds to
It's
the house.
not life or death.
To that
me.
argument, though, even Cindy, none of those houses have, other than the Roth house, have the garages that I know of attached to the house. They are all pulling up or on the street, and they're walking into their house.
So that's my point. The Roth House got to build and be completely different than what's going on in that neighborhood, and now this guy, he wants to build next to the Roth House, and they're saying, no, you can't build like that.
Something different.
You know, you have
Yeah,
to.
you could look at that house and say, hey, I don't know of any house that has a blunt garage. That's what you see 90% of that house from Jefferson, even though it's the back of the house. That argument could be made.
Except this particular board didn't approve the Roth House. So just
No, we had
because the
nothing to do
Roth
with
House is a
Yeah,
certain
but
way,
we're talking about
doesn't mean
precedent, aren't we?
need to- But
agree.
we didn't set that precedent.
No,
you
we
know,
didn't.
I don't.
We didn't,
I don't know
but we-
why that
Somebody
happened or how it happened. But I just know that I want the neighborhood to stay a lot the way it is, unless it's really necessary for people's living conditions to have a change.
Well, I think everybody's making valid points. And
Which is why I'm deferring the decision of the start review board.
So
can we just vote on this, start with Cindy and come down
Yeah.
this way?
About the portico.
Well, how are we? What are we voting on?
I abstain.
You
Can't
You have to
abstain.
break it.
I can leave.
Run for the back door.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful just so we can move on, because I think
Yeah,
the rest
because we
of
can
the
talk about this all
conditions-
night, and it's
I think
gonna,
the
whenever we
rest-
say yay or nay is going to
I
cause
just-
some sort of issue.
Okay, so the question at the table is, should the portico share remain as proposed? That's the question on the
Be
table.
approved as proposed.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Before you ask that, in 09 it was approved.
Yes.
Okay. So a no and a yes.
Yes.
It was approved in 09?
Yes.
You're not bound by the decision of
No, I
2009.
just was asking. I was trying to remember. Don't even do this to me. No, I'm asking you to.
I think Chair McLaughlin gets the privilege of the last vote.
Yeah. I vote for it.
For it?
Yeah.
Meaning yes.
Yes.
I don't have to say
You're off the
anything.
hook, dude.
Oh, yes, you will.
Oh, come
No,
on.
I don't.
You do.
The majority says to accept it.
So it remains not a condition of approval.
That's correct.
So based on our comments, these are the conditions of approval as amended, I see. We have condition of approval 4 to be revised to say instead of painted, all stairs shall be painted, all stairs shall be finished to match, all railings, deckings, and stairs shall be finished to match the house body trim. Under 6A, for specific fiberglass windows should be the applicant shall install, or if fiberglass windows are chosen, they shall be the Marvin Integrity as installed at 8138
813 JQ Adams.
JQ Adams, or an alternative as approved, or as an alternative that meets or exceeds the design of the Marvin Integrity windows. And then we have,
Yeah.
Oh, one thing we didn't talk about the windows is the heavy.
I have that on number 9.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Can I ask a question about 6C? Why is there an exclusion for River Rock?
Because actually, this is a perfect example. River Rock naturally in Oregon City was not used as a.
As a building
Brick or
material?
stone.
Not say, no, in Portland there actually are some River Rocks.
Yeah.
Wait, did you
Isn't
say
there some that have
Marvin Integrity?
How's this?
Of course, yeah,
Another
She's
example,
finished.
there's a lot of River Rock done badly, and so we don't have a great precedent of River Rock. So not that River Rock can't be done in bungalows, but I would really, really, really need to see, I think the board really need to see how the applicant is proposing to use River Rock before the board approves River Rock.
It has been
Whereas
used.
concrete wood and natural stone are a little more easy default to be compatible, where I think sometimes River Rock cannot be seen as compatible. Not that River Rock can't be on bungalows.
What did you want to say?
Okay.
No.
Yeah. Yes.
Nothing.
Yes, you did.
No, it's passed.
Okay. All right. Then we're on number 8.
Mm-hmm.
That's, and then number 9. And then Derek had.
The porch to be wood rather than concrete?
You're talking.
Okay, I thought that was related to the portico share, sorry.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
Oh, no.
for the porch. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the porch, so let's do for 6, D? Do you want to do that? Or what would be a good place to put that?
60 is fine.
60, saying the entry porch should be constructed of wood material.
Okay.
Not, not plywood.
And just to confirm that there is a minimum one stair leading up to,
It's probably at least one or two.
one or two stairs leading up to the,
I think there's two risers, I think. Yeah.
One, looks like.
There's 2 risers on the back.
There's 2 on the back. 1, 2 to that French door, so there's probably going to be at least 2.
illumination on that one.
We're off the record on my. Oh, there are. Well, I would either way. I'd venture that its scale looks like it's got to be 2.
I'm sure it's 2. It's going to be a minimum 12, 13 inches up anyway to the.
We could do a minimum, you could just have a minimum
2 steps.
height, maybe 2 steps.
Excuse me.
2 treads.
Option A or B, is that included in the conditions of
B
approval?
only.
B only.
Or B only.
Yeah, that's as proposed in the conditions right now.
Got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
Really nice to be able to control this. I know.
Was there something else you wanted to add to conditions?
Then condition 10. The details of the garage should mimic those shown in the updated drawings.
So I have details of the garage to make the details shown on the house plans submitted in October.
Correct.
Okay. Are we all clear on those conditions?
Yes.
Does someone want to make a motion for what is it?
Approval with conditions.
Yeah, but I don't.
HR
H
1204.
on HR 1204.
You can still go back to your packet.
Need a motion.
As modified by our previous vote. Right.
Did you make a motion? No. Does somebody want to make a
So
motion
moved.
on that?
You just need, I move that.
I move that we approve HR 1204 with conditions of approval as modified.
Second.
Second that. Okay, can we have a vote?
All right, Mr. Seward,
Aye.
Mr. Menson,
Aye.
Ms. Yates,
No.
Ms. Toll,
Aye.
Chair McLaughlin.
I don't know that I need to vote.
You have to do
I
one.
think you should.
You have to say yay, nay,
Aye.
abstain. Okay. Motion carries 4-1.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for coming.
Requesting a continuance on the garage?
We approved it.
No. We're done.
Actually, hold on.
I don't think so.
Yeah, no, unfortunately,
We didn't request one.
no.
We didn't?
This is where Denise is correct.
When did we do that?
This is where I'm not the attorney, but if someone requests, no, wait, you can request the record to stay on this.
I know. Land use 101.
I know. You can request that the record stay open for comments, but I don't know if you can request a continuance.
It has to.
I believe that has to come from the board.
No, but gee, there's a point. You can always request the 777 to keep the record open. I don't know if you can request. That's not the problem, and of course, I don't really know the best way.
But were you saying continuance for the garage?
If let's talk this through because I wish Carrie Richter was here, but she's not. So.
I'm willing to have you get back to me on it.
Well, no. The problem is this has to be decided now because if this gets approved, I mean it's.
But it is approved.
It has
We're
been
done.
approved.
I know.
Oh, we are.
But you can. If the record is closed tonight, and the record can stay open. I understand that you get 7 days for everyone to comment, and the applicant gets 7 days to respond back to anything the public wants to respond to, and then everyone gets 7 days to comment on. Oh no, the applicant has 7 days to comment with that. So that's after a decision. So I don't know. Excuse me for basically doing
Speaking out loud, yeah.
Out loud.
So that is different. That's after the decision is made to have to keep the record open. for that.
I believe that they keep the record open, but the decision hasn't been made.
Yeah.
What I was suggesting is that because there was other comments,
Yeah.
it's a procedural matter.
Yeah.
What I was suggesting is that since there was concern about whether the garage could be put there, I suggested that we continue that portion of this process to see whether that could happen.
But we never said we would.
No, I just have to request it. I didn't ask for you to agree. I just said
You didn't
If
request
you
it, you
requested it,
suggested
could
it.
be
yes, I suggest
continued.
that you keep it open. I said I'm requesting that you
Yeah,
look at it.
and I apologize. This is not my best.
We're not
piece
land
of
use lawyers,
information.
believe me.
No, but
Can you
you,
look it up on Google? And did you have the internet right
no,
there?
you did request that.
I didn't
As
hear
a
a request. I
suggestion.
heard her
I remember that.
suggest it.
Well, Renee could
And the
But-
applicant can always request it can be continued. My question, let's get down to the reality of the situation is, you can request this to open, but if the applicant doesn't want to submit any additional information, I don't know, regardless of legality.
Exactly.
Let's put the legality for a second.
I'm just bringing it up.
But if the
It's a
applicant-
question we'll have to get answered.
Well, no, but I want to resolve this tonight because I don't want anything
Hanging over our heads.
Put aside the legal question for a second. The reality is, if the applicant does not want to submit additional information on the garage, I don't know what a continuous necessarily does, other than if this is something the neighborhood association wants to be able to use in a future appeal. I mean, I get that potentially. So the reality of the applicant probably not proposing an alternative, I guess you can ask if you want to rescind that. I just, not being a land use attorney, I don't want to.
We should
If
mess
she
with
has,
it,
if she has the authority to request a continuance, and we
is
should
the-
be able to accept it, I don't want to cut that off.
Does that, are you saying that could potentially void out the,
Negate the decision.
Well, no, it gives grounds for appeal.
With a
If I said
continuance.
there's procedural questions, and then what that happens is it remands back to the historic review board.
Who-
So it's just some legal issues. And I
Can
don't
you
want-
withdraw your request?
I'm willing to be reasonable about it because I'm not an unreasonable person. If you all have no interest in following up on the suggestion that Vicki Yates made, then that's one thing. If there,
You mean the relocation of the garage?
right, if there is a, and again, I'm talking out loud, if there is a reasonable doubt in my mind that that's something you could have considered or should have considered, maybe the answer is no, that it doesn't
But I-
work.
brought up arguments for where it
She
is.
clarified that by saying the only reason she was thinking about relocation of the garage was to eliminate the porte cochere. That's the only reason she thought of
happens
it
to an appeal.
that way. And
but I
then
did discuss the garage as
Comes
far
back
as
to us.
sighting. I mean, I made
City
that
commission,
discussion
they
of
could choose
this
to remand it back to you.
down low behind a house. You can't see it as much. Maybe keeping it off the front. I mean, where the house is, it keeps things a little bit more open. I mean, that was a discussion I had. I
And
didn't
to
have an
me, it
opinion
would
on
be a matter of massing.
Oh, I agree, and I said that. I said, you may not want it to be a
Yeah,
story
it
and
would
a half.
be huge,
Okay,
massing.
well, in the interest of fair play and public process, I'll still keep it on the record as a suggestion, but I'll withdraw the continuance.
Okay.
Okay.
And then,
That's very fair.
You know what? Just since the record's open again, I mean, I think we should. I mean, just to dot our i's and cross our t's. Let's allow open up the record, allow any other public comment, and vote. Just so we. I guess ask if anybody else in the audience wants to comment.
Then I have to open this back up.
Yeah.
Whatever Denise said doesn't.
I just want to make sure that
But I believe
the
I-
procedural issue is not.
So you want me to open this up to see if anybody else has a comment, close it, revote.
Yes. Withdrawing the request.
She
Okay.
just said she withdrew it.
Okay.
Leave it alone.
Okay.
It is open right now.
I just want to make sure this isn't a procedure.
I can open it back up.
Okay.
Let the lights shine on us.
Okay, you can come up, and then I'm going to close it right after that.
Okay. I'm finding a very divergent attitude here. where we're saying that they can't use River Rock because it's not used in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that-
But we're saying that they can have a porte cochere. It's not in the neighborhood. Also, the comment of our house being very, very large, we were under the impression, and these were the rules that were given to us, that the house had to be designed to face John Adams. That does not look a lot like a large house from John Adams, other than it's way up in the air. The Jefferson part wasn't addressed at all as part of what the thing looked like from the street.
Well, you're not even going to be able to see this house from the street.
Oh, yes, you
No.
can. You
Okay,
can see
we're
it much
done.
more than ours.
We're done. I'm going to close it.
Not from John Adams.
Well,
I'm done. We're done.
You have to leave it open.
No, John.
You can't do that.
But you're done, right?
I want to make this very,
Okay.
very clear.
Yeah.
We're saying in
gotcha.
one port we can't use River Rock
I
because
hear
it's
ya.
not used.
I hear you.
Okay? Thank you.
Yeah. And for the record, I think it is appropriate use in this occasion because it is.
The River Rock?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
But I'm not
yeah,
going to
I-
contest it as a condition.
Yeah.
I'm saying, in my personal opinion, is I think it would make sense.
And-
But
Yeah, I hear that too.
Is it closed? Can we talk?
That we need to we're opening up and we're going to revote.
okay.
Okay.
We are gonna
And I
revote.
agree with Kathy, and I was going to say the same thing, but I didn't because Christina said, well, it's not that it's prohibited, River Rock's prohibited, it's just that people do it really poorly. So I decide, but
Yes, that's
essentially I agree, and I think we're making inconsistent decisions, and it doesn't feel good to me.
And if the board wants to revise that condition to be more, we've just generally said no River Rock because it has just turned out to be
You know,
bad specs, just badly done.
thing
It
is-
honestly looks suburban. It just
Well,
never
faux
turns
River
out-
Rock
yeah.
just looks
Yeah.
like faux River Rock.
Yes,
it does.
If you had real rock, because I've seen tons of bungalows across this country that are using
Yeah.
River Rock, but it's the real stuff, and most builders aren't going to use it because it's cost prohibitive.
Right.
But it says here natural stone.
Yeah.
That's
So,
natural stone.
so I would think you could say, you know, and I don't know if we can change this and
You're going to make an amendment to the.
take that parentheses out, because if it's River Rock,
It's
got to be
natural stone.
natural River
Natural
Rock,
River Rock.
and it's not going to happen because they're not going to pay for it. So they're going to make it wood or something like that. So I totally get what you're saying. And I get what you're saying. So yeah, I'd like to keep everything consistent. But anyway.
Yeah, and if you went through this revote, if you want to amend 6C to exclude the parenthetical River Rock and just keep it natural stone, that can be done.
I think that needs to be that way
I agree.
all the time.
Before we change that, I'll say that it would be more typical if there was a fireplace that also included River Rock with it, in addition to the column bases. It just being the column bases, that is a little atypical, which is why I did not specifically throw that out earlier.
Yeah.
To change the excluding River Rock.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Can I close this? I'm losing control. Okay. So
Okay, this is the time to make a new motion
A new
and any
motion.
additional amendments if you feel they're warranted or not.
So are we amending C? Is my question.
yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Does that seem amiable to you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Still going to vote no because of the other issue. That's fine.
I'm grateful for you being here. to do that.
Okay, I need a motion and declaring how the amendment is to be read.
Does someone want to make a motion on HR 1204?
I move we approve HR 1204 with the newly amended condition number 6.
C.
C.
We're
To
doing
remove River Rock.
remove
To
the
remove the River
parenthetical.
Rock exclusion.
Good call.
Second?
I second.
Okay.
Vote.
So, point of information. So this vote is completely new. It's not just because of this.
No, it's complete.
This is the final, it's maybe overkill, but as you know, I'd rather things get appealed on merit and not procedure. So if we need to overkill a procedure, I want to overkill a
No,
procedure.
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we vote.
Ms. Yates,
No.
Ms. Tolt,
Yes.
Mr. Metzen,
No.
Mr. Siebert.
Yeah. Aye. Or yes?
I did vote no.
Aye. No, you didn't call my name.
Chair McLaughlin, vote.
Aye.
This motion carries 3-2.
Okay, thank you. I think
We could use the word motif, I guess. Huh? And that could force something more than just this.
that's why I drug you back.
Had to
Perhaps.
put it somewhere else.
If it was used somewhere else, it would make sense, but just on the pillars, that would,
So not everything's
yeah,
always
it might as well be
You know,
a
that's
cheap
why-
track home or, yeah,
Okay.
a double wide with
I'm glad I
rock in the
didn't
front.
make a comment on the board.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Cynic.
I didn't know what I was going to say.
And I want to thank all of you. This was a hard one.
It's a hard 2.5 hours.
I
Yes,
felt
it
as
was.
staff, I didn't know how I would vote if I was in your shoes tonight on some of these issues. So
Yeah.
I still
You're
didn't know
tough.
how I voted. I
So,
still know how I would vote.
Though I do have a couple announcements, a real quick
Good luck.
presentation.
So,
You're good.
You're good.
fast?
It is.
So,
Yeah, with a lot of stuff.
So I'm going to be noticed.
And no hard
Please do not
feelings.
use River Rock, that's what I have to say.
They won't. They're builders.
Yeah, they know better.
So I'm going to be noticing at the notice of decision, and there'll be
No,
an
it'll be
appeal
what?
period.
Why
And
did you
then
change your mind?
10 days.
Like the Red River Rock doesn't.
Anybody withstanding can appeal the decision.
They don't have any. They don't have any.
Maybe, maybe not.
And what does that mean then?
She withdrew her request, and so there's no grounds for an appeal.
That's right. I kept looking at that.
Element.
The procedural grounds.
Right.
You could, anybody withstanding can appeal the
Can appeal.
decision.
I see it all over the place.
He could have come up with free will
Appeals
next
stands.
to Rock anyway.
All the time.
So you're good to
So
go.
what happens then if the board just makes
I know
an appeal, then it
exactly
goes to
where
the city
it's parked
commission,
shares.
And
which
back.
is here.
Yeah, and I can walk that through because we get some more things on the item. But I can absolutely walk that through.
Do you want to email me those conditions?
I will.
That's why I
Because you'll get that in
to
the-
have
you'll get it in
somebody
the
saying,
notice.
"Hey, here's in the district. Here's this one. Here's this
Appreciate it,
one."
guys.
I'll rewrite them all.
Thanks for bringing us such a simple one.
No problem, man. Keep them coming, right?
That's right.
I know that's why he's here, not his dad, because I don't think he wanted to spar with us again.
Yeah.
That's
You're right.
99% why. So, oh yeah, we still got some other.
All right, real quickly tonight. I know we've taken a long time, but this is on the website. I want to try in our work sessions to do some education. So I wanted to. Oh, and I lost everything. Shoot.
Okay.
No, I wanted to give you
I just felt sick.
the 1940 census. Just want to let you know that there's a lot of new opportunities for research in Oregon City for the census. One thing you can do on the actual census.gov website is you can look up the actual street PDF of the census form. And I was going to open one up for you in Oregon City, and you can see the street address, the different street numbers, who live there, and all the information, what their education was, how much they made, what they did for a living. So there's just a lot of new information we can get now that the 1940 census has all been digitized. Prior to that, the 30s and 20s and 10s, they were all on microfiche still. But what was different this time is they decided to send it directly as JPEGs. So you get, and when on this, I had all the websites up when we, they're all up. Yes, yay, they're all good. Okay, so this is the official National Archive 1940 census website. And this is actually great if you want to find your street in Oregon City in 1940 and who lived there. So we're going to walk this through real quickly. No, but I'll show you what they have. You can see the census form. And so for people who are doing research on their house and want to know who lived in my house on the 1940 census, I can tell you how to get there.
Should we throw you out an address?
Well, maybe. Hold on. So we're going to start our search. And let's select the state, Oregon, the county, Clackamas County, city, Oregon City, and who wants to pick their street? First one.
Me, 10th Street.
Okay, 10th Street. Where's 10th?
Not there.
It wasn't there.
Close. Okay, so we search. And these are broken up in like 22-page PDFs, so you got to look through it a little bit. So now, when I did mine in Portland, it was really complicated. I had to find like a master map and then get to my quadrant. It was a lot more complicated. but hopefully Oregon City is not. So this is the same thing. I think it has. Let's just go for the first search response to see. And this is where we may not be able to find your Cindy, because I don't know if we want to go through 22 pages. But
Couldn't you put in the cross street?
oh, did I not do that?
Yeah,
Here. You're right. I did that for my Portland house. Oops.
because that should make it easier.
Yeah. I know, but
Now you can't
I'm trying
go
to get back.
It's not gonna let you.
It's in the first tab. There you go.
And where did Cross Street
And
go?
then it said,
In the yellow box.
yeah.
Oh, Addis Street. Remember,
I've narrowed it.
It's only only 56 pages.
okay. So once again, we'll see if we can find it. If not, I'll just show you what a page looks like, and then Cindy, you can go home and do it yourself. But this, it actually, if you can clicking and drag, I was able to get the zoom. Oh, here we go. This actually, you see it gets better. It's just a lot of, this is data intensive, these PDFs, so it zooms in. And I was able to do it on my computer.
I think you're going to have to drag it.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So just so you see, this shows, I'm going to zoom out. Yeah. I'm going to zoom back out a little bit. Yeah, sorry about this. This computer is just so slow. It's the laptop. It's not, because I did this pretty quick at my office. So, so what happens, the see right here, it says 12th Street. That's the name of the street. And a lot of times these are not a full block, so the census person may do a little bit of 12th and they've crossed the block, and then they might do the same side of the street but the next street up for 3 more houses. So sometimes you have to play around for a couple of PDF pages till you find. They didn't do it in perfect, block by block. But you'll see here it says 12th Street, and then this is the number. And I don't know why this,
So if you hit 10th Street, why is it showing 12th Street?
well, because the way the census did it is they put 20 census records into one PDF. So basically you're giving them this background information. They're saying somewhere in this 20 pages is your information. So you got to do a little sleuthing. And I'm sorry that for some reason this computer doesn't want to zoom out. But just for the sake of you, the name of the street's here, and then like this is an example. This is the 1004. I'm just going to say it's 12th. I don't know what that is. Madison. And then you have the household data, the name.
Head of the house.
Yeah, it's head of the house, the gender, what their schooling was, where they lived 5 years ago, same place, where they were born. Yeah, once again, I'm sorry this computer's slow. So it goes on. So it gives you really interesting information about the person who lived in your house in 1940. Did they own their house? Did they rent?
I learned a really interesting thing when I was doing some Ancestry.com
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And I found my great-grandmother, and then all of a sudden, one census, she was there and my great-grandfather was there. Next census, my great-grandfather obviously had died, and there was a strange man's name there. Well, who the heck is that? It ends up it was a boarder.
Yeah, oh yeah, and this
Like,
one.
borders.
Yeah, no.
So I learned a lot about
Yeah,
my family.
and I did the same thing for my father-in-law's family. They lived up in Northeast Portland. They had a border. Same person. It was interesting.
How recently has this been?
So this was released in April.
So I wonder if Ancestry will pick it up. How fast
Yeah,
does
so you
it
can
use
get
up?
it. Now, the next page, which John may know a little bit about, but so this is if you know your address, or you want to find out who lived on your block, so that you can kind of go backwards that way. But this is PDFs, and it's not queried by person's name. What the LDS Family Center has done since April is lots and lots of volunteers have been entering data and indexing it all over the nation. So this private site, which is from the LDS Church, it's their family research site, you can go and find and query people by name. And between April and now, they were doing states individually and said, like, your state has now been indexed and this state has now been indexed. And now I think every state has been indexed as of now. So I'm just going to, someone throw out the name of somebody you think you know lived in Oregon in the 1940 census. If anybody has any, if not, I have somebody I can do.
Freegard. Freegard.
Okay. What, can you spell it for me?
Fregaard.
And first name.
Thomas,
And state and county.
Oregon.
Okay, well, so that. So let's do
And he lived
Oregon.
in Colton, so that would be
Clackamas County
Clackamas County.
and Colton. Hopefully he lived in incorporated Colton and not unincorporated.
Close. if
Yeah.
not.
So it'll probably bring it up. Did I spell that right? Fregaard? Okay. So we're going to leave out head of household, gender, race, because I think
Right.
that's enough. And we're going to search.
No records for Thomas Freegard, I'll be darned.
So I just did my father-in-law's as a example. So let's do. Only reason I know this actually works, I just did it about an hour ago.
His name is Niall. Huh. One of my very close friends is named Niall, but he's the only one.
How many of them?
Not many.
Okay, and then Multnomah and Portland. Just to give you a what an answer looks like. There he is, 1916. There's his residence. So if you click on this, they have that one-page PDF of the census form that we just saw.
Oh.
So if you can do view image. Yeah, it's this laptop is just.
So is there a link to this on the Search 1940 census?
Yeah, I actually have it on the website, so you can. And the link, the hyperlink was lost, and so it on the status report it doesn't look very good. But I can also send you another email on it. So here's this works much better. Okay, so just real quickly. Okay, he lived on San Rafael up in Northeast, 622. I forget what this one is. Here's his father, and here's him. Head, there's the son. Male, white, 5224, divorced, single. Something else. 8th grade, high school. The H4 is high school, and you'll see a C4 for college, 4 years.
Does it say Norway?
That one's Sweden. Probably the Norway is the person above him
Above,
next door.
so Sweden.
And the son is in Oregon.
Johanna.
And then same house in 35. So there's a lot of really interesting information. Then you get over here, which talks about what they did, truck driver, electrician, and then how much money they made even over here per week, and how many weeks they work. So really kind of fascinating information on your family you can get from the 19, or you can research, once again, your house.
Been a doctor.
So you can look back and who lived in your house at the 1940 census and what they did for a living. So it's,
Right.
and now all this information you can
Maybe
get
you
from
didn't understand
the previous ones, but until now you've had to go find the, do pretty laborious microfilm search. So hopefully one day these other previous census forms will be uploaded and indexed. You know, I mean, as technology gets faster, you might find earlier census just like this. But the fact this 1940 census is different is the government released it all digitally for the first time,
Right.
rather than sending it out in the microfilm.
Interesting.
So that was our education
Very
lesson
big deal.
today.
When they released that, the site crashed.
Yeah.
People just jumped on it.
So pretty neat piece of research in your house or your family. So, and now you know that my husband's father-in-law lived in Portland.
Swedish, too.
Okay. That was our education night. And then one thing I wanted to present, I was at the Certified Local Government meeting last month, which was associated with the Main Street Conference, where the staffs of different certified local government meet to learn and education. And we were one of the top 5 CLGs as designated by SHPO, thanking us for all the hard work we do. So we got the Golden Paintbrush Award. We were 5. So I wanted to present this to the board. It's a little cheesy. We painted it, but you know, they wanted to recognize the work that we do and thank us. And I think us, Corvallis, Albany, Cottage Grove, and another city were one of the 5s that recognized. So thank you for all you do, and they wanted to give that to us. So may not be in the front foyer with some of the other awards, but
Okay, anything else?
that's all. Real quickly, I am going to the National Trust Conference next week.
That too.
Yeah.
Maybe
And that's in Spokane?
In Spokane. Actually, Sarah, the preservation planner in Westland, and myself received a scholarship from the Historic Preservation League of Oregon to pay for our trip up there to Spokane. So I'll be gone Tuesday through Saturday of next week, and hope to learn lots. And really excited, and as part of my requirement for the grant, I will be sharing what I learned at next month's work session.
Sharing your what?
Share what I've learned as in a public forum. So you'll get the pleasure of hearing my debrief and probably a little half-hour presentation to say thank you. And
You can reprise tonight's meeting. That'd be a good one.
so it'll be good. I'm excited to see what Spokane. I went to the National Trust Conference when it was here in Portland, but not all of it. So this is my first time going to the full.
I was in Spokane 2 weeks ago. It's a neat little town.
Yeah, and they've actually have a great story of industrial redevelopment, Blue Heron. So I hope to learn a lot about kind of how they've approached some of these.
I should go into Hotel Davenport.
That's where I found a special deal. So I'm very excited about that.
It's a cool place.
One question?
Yeah.
I'm going to send Nancy an email asking her
About the paper.
about the paper. And do you guys feel comfortable me saying that everybody wants to do it? Or
Yes.
We agreed,
individuals?
yeah.
Yeah.
We agreed.
Give her all our emails
Okay.
if she wants to.
Okay. I don't want to
It's not going to swear, but
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No, and I think we have a case to make in regards to getting hard copies because we are a quasi-judicial board. Though the city commission is not getting hard copies, and they're also can be quasi-judicial
Yeah.
board. So
Land use board, right?
I'm happy to do it. I've just kind of been told that,
Yeah.
if everybody wants it, then we send it to all the appointed boards, and we aren't really doing our goal of trying to be a paperless community,
So how many quasi-judicial boards are there? Planning Commission and us?
along with the city commission.
And the City Commission?
That's
They
it.
don't. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
That was a party.
Yeah, you guys did great tonight.